is a pivotal point in the Bible. It's pivotal because we are between the judges and the kings. So we're literally going to pivot how the rulers work of this nation and what God is doing. And so I think at this pivotal time, we should take a step back and review just a bit. And I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning because I think that's important to remember that when God created this earth, he said it was good. In fact, he made us and he said it was very good. He's crazy about this creation. He wants good things for it. We found that pretty quickly things went south. His creation didn't love him back. His creation did not love each other. And God was like the first tech support. First thing tech support says when you call them. Have you tried rebooting? And God tries a reboot with the flood. But things still go south from there. But he eventually finds this guy who cares more about helping other people and preserving other people than his own name. And that was Abraham. And God said, I can rebuild things through this guy. And so he made him a promise that he was going to become a great nation and that his children were going to live in this land. And unfortunately, there's going to be a little detour. So in fact, we see that all of his kids end up going to Egypt. And that becomes the womb for this nation. It's about 70 people that go down there. They turn into a force of hundreds of thousands of them, perhaps millions, when they come out. And they are birthed out of Egypt. And that's what we find in the Passover and the Exit. They come out into the desert, and we had a marriage ceremony. God says, I have a plan for you. I want you to be a kingdom of priests. I want you to mediate between me and the rest of the world. That's my plan for you. And he puts them at the crossroads of the earth where they can do that. He gives them this plan for a tabernacle and instructions for the priesthood. And he says, I know you don't know how to do it yet, but I'm going to show you. This is what it's like. This is what it looks like to be a priest. And so he sets the tabernacle in the middle of the camp for them to learn. They sort of learn. They're stubborn, right? And in fact, they're there in the desert on the way to the promised land. They have a little detour. It takes them about 40 years to get where they're going. But they finally come into the land in Joshua. And God gives them a job. He says, I need you to clear out the evil that's here so we can get started. And they start doing that in Joshua, but they don't quite complete the job. And we find that becomes a problem in the period of Judges because the evil that's there becomes their evil. And they have the same problems that the people have there. And it leads to this cycle of them becoming oppressed because they're not doing what God says. And they cry out to God. And God sends them salvation through a judge. And we see this over and over again through Judges. But not just the same thing. It's moving in a certain way. And it's complicated how it's moving. In one way, it's getting worse, right? We see that pattern in the Judges that they're getting worse each time. And in fact, it gets so bad that at the end, we again have this picture of Sodom and Gomorrah. Probably the worst thing that we saw in the Torah that the pagans were doing. Israel has now become that. And yet, we also saw that God was in the mud with his people. He was still there, working even in that. And then after the Judges, we had this really refreshing story that even though if you zoom out, things look horrible, there are still people that are following Torah. There are people that are doing what God said. And in fact, it seems like we've started this cycle again, that things have gone wrong, but God has found someone through whom he's going to rebuild. And it's a new Abraham, but this time her name is Ruth. And she is going to be, I believe, the great-grandmother of David, who's going to kind of get things started. But we're in this in-between time. And so our story starts with this lady named Hannah. And that gets us to Samuel. And I'm going to summarize this first chapter. So Hannah, get a load of this. Can you believe this? Barren. We've got a barren woman. And in fact, she's married to this guy that has 2 wives. She happens to be the favorite wife. In fact, her name means favor. So Her husband really likes her, but the other wife, her rival, is popping out children. She has none. Okay? And have we heard this story before? Yes. So Paul, who does this remind you of? Who was she like? So Sarah, now that's interesting because the first thing that came to my mind was Rachel. Right. Because the thing that sticks out, we have two wives, right? One of them is favored. She's not having children. But it is Sarah, right, as well. So she is both. But she's also like Abraham because she's going to leave her people, go to this land. In fact, she goes to Israel just like Abraham does. And so she is both a picture of Sarah, of Rachel, and of Abraham. That's Ruth. Sorry, y'all just got me just like Ruth there. Ruth is, but Hannah is going to be this picture of both Sarah and of Rachel. She's going to have a little bit different story. She's going to be like Ruth in a way because Ruth is barren. Ruth is going to make this vow. And I think it's probably the best vow that's in the whole Bible. Because she just says, no, I'm not leaving you, mother-in-law. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going wherever you go. Your people are going to be my people. Your God is going to be my God. And even when you're dead, I'm not going anywhere. And even when I'm dead, I'm not going anywhere because they're going to put my bones right beside of your bones. And if I fail at this, may God deal with me ever so severely if I don't do anything that I've said. She has asked for nothing and promised everything. Hannah's going to make a vow. It's a pretty good vow. It's not Ruth's vow. It's a pretty good vow. She says, listen, God, if you will give me a child, then I will give him to you. And there's this whole scene where she's praying this, she's pouring her heart out in the where they worship there, which is in Shiloh at this time, and the priest sees her, Eli sees her, and he sees her lips are moving, but no words are coming out, and he thinks that she's drunk, and she says, no, I'm not drunk. I'm oppressed, and I'm pouring my heart out to God. This is what I want a child. And Eli says, may God grant you your desires. And he does. And so she has this child. She keeps him until he is weaned. Now, practically that makes sense, right? Because if he's going to go worship there around the ark and the tabernacle, it's unclear if they still have the tabernacle. We'll get to that later. But if you just send a newborn baby, he's not going to help very much. Newborn babies need a lot of help. In fact, they need their mother for sustenance. And so it makes sense for her to keep him until he's weaned, and so she does that. But it also, I'm sensing a pattern here as well, because you remember Jephthah. He also makes a vow that he's going to dedicate something to the Lord. And it was his daughter. She said, wait a minute. Let me go for a while first and celebrate with my fans. Yeah, I get a chuckle out of my kids here. Sorry, inside joke there. Wait a minute. And so Hannah also says, wait a minute. Let me keep him till he's weaned. And then I'll send him over to you. And there he will serve with you. And that brings us to chapter 2. And I want to do something we haven't done yet, which is I want to focus on the song. We've had several songs so far. There's a great one in Exodus after they come out. There's some in Judges. There's some other songs. We have mostly skipped them because songs are kind of difficult for us. We're able to latch on to the stories a little bit better because we can see what's going on, and even if we miss the deeper meaning, we at least understand, what's happening. We can follow the story. But songs, it's easy for us to get lost in. But I want to focus on this one. So, do we have anyone this morning that wants to read? I don't think we have too many terrible names in this one. Anybody want to read this song? All right, and so that would be through. Let's go through verse 11 through 11 in chapter 2.
Then Hannah prayed and said, My heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord my horn is lifted high. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. Do not keep talking so proudly, or let your mouth speak such arrogance. For the Lord is a God who knows, and by him deeds are weighed. The bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumbled are armed with strength. Those who were full hire themselves out. Those who were full hire themselves out for food, but those who were hungry are hungry no more. She who was barren has borne 7 children, but she who has had many sons pines away. The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up. The Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and exalts. He raises the poor from the dust, and he lifts the needy from the ash heaps. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. For the foundation of the earth are the Lord's. On them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of the faithful servants, but the wicked will be silenced in the place of darkness. It is not by strength that one prevails. Those who oppose the Lord will be broken. The Most High will thunder from heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah, and the boy ministered for the Lord.
All right. I'm not going to ask for questions, but what sticks out to you about this? As John was reading that, what did you hear that you found interesting or that stuck out to you? All right, I'll start. In the very beginning, she says, "In the Lord my horn is lifted high." I find that about a little odd. Anyone else? Or do you see why I might find that odd? I mean, you've just been hunting, Mike, and when you're hunting for horns, of course they're antlers, what are you hunting? Are you hunting a male or a female deer?
With the horns, you hunt the male.
Yeah, we associate horns with the male animals. Not always the case. Caribou, I mean, there's animals that the females have horns, but we think of horns as being the male. So I find that a little bit odd that she starts with that.
Could there be a different connotation though when you think of hunting with horns? Because if you look at the old hunts and even the fox hunts, they had the ram's horn that they blew while they were hunting to scare up the game in front of them.
And there is, I think so. Like horns have always been significant to us in that way, and we have always seen them as a symbol of power, as a symbol of pride. Are you looking for small horns out there? Are you looking for this? You're looking for this. Is what you're looking for. Big horns is what I want.
The footnote here says a symbolizes strength.
Strength, power, and the males are using their horns to fight for dominance.
They're loud, and you're not sneaking up on somebody if you're blowing a horn and say, "I'm coming."
Exactly, and so the connotation is here is of like a battle, that she has been in this battle.
That was the other thing I was driving at with the horn, was like the hunt of the roaring lion. The lion roars before to kind of scare and paralyze the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could look at it that way. And they did use a shofar, which was like a horn that was made out of horn. I mean, a horn, like blow a horn.
Yeah, but
It's made out of a horn.
like a ram's horn, like the bigger curved horns.
Yeah, that's what the shofars are made out of. But this, my understanding is the connotation is like of a bull's horn. And the bull is lifting its horn after it's been in a battle and it's been victorious. Now, that's interesting because she talks about being humble. she doesn't really sound very humble, at
Right,
least in
but
this
she
first
says
part.
She boasts above her enemies. And
I'm boasting above my enemies, but don't you boast. But I'm boasting above my enemies. Okay. Also, I don't know if anyone interested. I found the horn interesting in the beginning, and then you get to the end, and there's horn. It ends with a horn, which we'll get to. But if you got a horn in the beginning and a horn at the end, what are you thinking? You thinking what I'm thinking?
maybe.
Yeah, there's got to be a chiasm in here. I didn't look for it. Y'all can use that as homework if you want, but I'd be shocked if this whole thing wasn't a chiasm. Okay, so we've got that. Then, as we get into this next part, from verse 4, the bows of the warriors are broken. Let's say all the way down through verse 8. We have this section that's got a certain theme to it. And what would you all say that theme is? We've got the bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumbled are armed with strength. So the mighty are getting shattered. The weak are becoming strengthened. The full are becoming hungry. The hungry are becoming full. The one with many children is pining away. The one who was barren has 7 children. Are y'all sensing a theme here? Beatitudes. This is exactly like the Beatitudes. And in fact, just one, there's the inversion, right? We see that in the Beatitudes. You know, if you're humble, you'll be lifted up. If you're thirsting, then you'll be filled. We see those things, and it's also with the theme itself. So we have warriors, we have food, we have having children. Jesus is going to even mirror those. And I'll just take a second. I don't want to get on a high horse here, but we think of Jesus, and maybe especially in that Sermon on the Mount, like, oh, he's bringing a new covenant. He's coming and he's telling us new things, doing away with the old, having the new. You've heard it said this as he's doing away with the law. He is not doing away with the law. Jesus is a living, breathing, walking, talking Torah. And he has modeled his message on the Sermon on the Mount after Hannah's song. Everything he gets is from the Old Testament. We'll see that in, I don't know, years, maybe. I don't know how long. It's going to be a while. But she's saying here that, like, there's going to be this inversion. We find that's exactly what Jesus is going to say about the kingdom. It's not who you think. It's not the proud. It's not the mighty. It's the weak. It's the humble. It's the lowly that are going to be lifted up. And this is exactly what Hannah is saying here. And it's interesting. We're going to get to this point where it says, those who oppose the Lord will be shattered. And this is the way we think, right? If you do what God says, you're going to be blessed. But if you don't do what God says, there's trouble coming your way. Well, in the first part, that's not what she's saying. She's saying, if you're full, you're going to be hungry. If you're hungry, you're going to be full. Nothing about whether they're following the Lord. Right? But in the second part, we get that it turns out this is true also. It turns out it's also true that those who oppose the Lord will be shattered, but those who follow him will have strength. And she's making it clear that the people that prevail, it's not because they're strong. It's not because of them. It's not because of something inside of them. It comes from the Lord. Any other thoughts on this song? Anything you see? Any questions?
I would say that the theme, to me, that all the outcomes for anybody is based on the fact that she said the Lord is a God who knows, and by him deeds are weighed.
Yes. So I keyed in on this phrase, the Lord will judge the ends of the earth. Okay? We just got through with Judges. Well, I wasn't here. You did Ruth. But the theme of that, the whole thing is a chiasm, which eventually points to God is the judge. You should be following God as your judge. And we're going to continue this theme through this book. You're going to see it. And it's here in the song. God is the one that's judging. You should be looking to him as your judge. You should be looking to him as the one that goes out in front of you to fight. It's going to come up later. Are we looking for God to go out in front of us and fight? No, we want a king to go out in front of us and fight. Are we looking to God for who we get our instructions from? No, they're not looking to God, but they should be, because God is the judge. God is the strength. God is the warrior. And we see that here. It's definitely in this song. And it turns out this song, it's not just here like I don't know about you all, but it seems kind of weird, right? It's got a little weirdness to it. It's got parts of it that kind of make me uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable that she starts out by saying, oh, who's going to succeed is who has not succeeded. It's the weak who's going to succeed. And then she says, well, it's those who follow the Lord. Because we're all about you follow the Lord to succeed. But she's saying it's going to be inverted. And then she finally gets to the part about, following the Lord is going to lead to good results. And it turns out this song is going to be our pattern for the whole book. She's talking about the weak being lifted up. And that's happened with her. She has just experienced that. That's where this song comes from. But if you notice at the end, she ends by saying, he will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Where's this king coming from? Why is she talking about a king? What reason does she have to talk about a king? Does Israel have a king? Are they looking for a king? Not yet. Has there been any word, any sign, any reason for her to start talking about a king, that God's going to lift up the king? Nothing.
There hasn't been word, but that doesn't mean that people don't, for the same reasons when they call for a king, they haven't wanted it all along to be like the other nations.
And so, interestingly, in the book, I talked about God as the judge. It says they actually do have a king in Judges. And it's kind of unclear. He's not like the king of the whole land. It doesn't seem like he's a real king, but it calls him a king. They anoint one of those guys, I forget his name. But they actually anoint him as a king. And so there is this evidence that like they're wanting it. But even apart from that, why does that make her say that God is going to lift up a king, to lift up this anointed one? She's being prophetic here. And that's exactly what God is going to do. And who is God going to pick first? He's going to pick Saul, that on the one hand, he's head and shoulders taller than everyone else. He kind of looks like a king. On the other hand, he's a loser. He is a loser. We probably won't get to that till next week, and then he's going to do the same thing with David. Oh, we got all these brothers. Let's parade them in front of me. Look how big, how strong they are. Coming from the stock of Boaz. These guys. No, that's none of them. No, it's the little guy. The one we sent out in the field to be the shepherd. Because, that's what we give the job to children to do. We can't do anything else. And so this pattern of the lowly being lifted up is what we're going to see in this book. There's another pattern. What's going to happen to Saul? He's going to fall. And in fact, also what's going to happen to David? He's also going to fall. But before we get to that, she talked to a priest. His name was Eli. And she's sending her son to be here with his family, who are the priests. She sent her son to serve there. And it turns out, what is going to happen to Eli?
Break his neck.
Yes. So, and that is what follows, basically. First, we're going to have this prophecy against Eli. We're going to find out that his sons are not all that. In fact, they're pretty terrible. They are bullying people that are coming to serve God. There's this weird thing about they're boiling the meat, which is, I don't know if you've ever done that. You just take a raw piece of meat, you boil it. What's going to rise to the top? The fat is going to rise to the top. And to them, the fat is always the good part. And specifically, it says in the law that the fat is God's. And so they're coming through. The people are boiling, trying to boil their meat to get the fat off. And the sons are coming by and like, no, don't boil it. We want you to cut our part off before that, before you boil it. And they're taking what is God's. Fat is God's. And they're taking that part. And even though the people are trying to do what's right, they're like, no, we're trying to do this the right way. And the sons are like, no, we're not going to let you do that. We find out that they have women there that are serving at the entrance of the tent. They're sleeping with those women.
Which means that they're also, if they have women there, they're shrine prostitutes, basically.
Yeah, this is what the pagans are doing.
Right.
This is what the pagans have. And it's like, wait a minute, where are you getting this from? Well, from the pagans. The pagans are doing this, so yeah, we're going to do it too. And Eli comes to them and he's like, hey, you're not doing what's right. You need to clean up your act. And it does not work because they keep doing what they've been doing. Eli eventually gets old, becomes blind, which is another one of our themes. The man who does not look after his children and get his house in order. Where did we see that the first time? Who was old and he had 2 children and one of them comes to trick him? Isaac has Jacob and Esau. We actually see it first. The sages believe with Lamech, where they think the pattern starts. But we see it with Eli. We see it with Isaac. And then God makes this prophecy against them. It's like, your house is going to be cut off. And we have this story about the ark being captured by the Philistines. And because they go out to war, they're like, well, it didn't go well. We need the ark. Let's use the ark as like this thing that's going to help us. If we have that, then we'll go out and we'll win. Well, they don't win. And the ark gets captured. And as the news comes back, well, for one, Eli's sons get killed during this battle. And somebody comes back with the news, and Eli is, I guess he's like leaning on a stool against something. And when he hears the news, he falls over, it says, because he was old and fat. He was heavy. And so he falls down, he breaks his neck. And eventually the ark is going to come back. And I want to tell you what I find is interesting that happens. After this house is cut off, now who's going to be the new guy? What do you think? It's going to be Samuel. Right? And it's just like the song says. You know, those who were powerful, they're corrupt, they're cut off. And who does God raise up? The child of this barren woman who was scorned. She was not full, but now her son is becoming the leader of the whole nation because of this. And you would think like, all right, we got it now. Samuel, he's going to be the guy. He's seen what's happened with Eli, how his sons went astray. And so what do you think he's going to do with his house? How do you think his sons are going to fare when they grow up? You'd think they'd be better. You would hope they would be better, but what happens? His sons are just like Eli's sons. And so when we finally get to this point of having a king, it happens because Samuel is old, and the people come and they're like, look, you've been good, but your sons are horrible. And we know you're not going to be around much longer. And so we want a king. And let's read this because I find it so interesting. It's chapter 8. Anyone else want to read? All right, I'll read here starting in chapter 8. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges for Israel. The name of his firstborn was Joel. The name of his second was Abijah. And they served at Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." But when they said, "Give us a king to lead us," this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will do. Does anyone else have a problem with this? Or find this off?
Sometimes God lets us get what we think we want to show us that's not what we need.
Yeah. Okay, this is fascinating. This is fascinating that the God's like, you're not supposed to have a king. I'm supposed to be your king. I'm supposed to go out before you. And that specifically, they say, we want a king who is going to go out before us. I don't think they've said that. Did they say that specifically? They're going to say, we want a king like the other nations. It's after the speech. After the speech, they're going to say, we want a king to go out and battle in front of us. Like the other nations. When they go to war, their king, he rides out in front of them. We want that. And that's exactly what God is supposed to do. That's exactly what God did in Egypt. Isn't it? It's exactly what he did. And they're like, no, we want a king to do that. That's what God is supposed to do. And God is supposed to be the judge. And God is supposed to be your ruler. They're rejecting him. And yet, God goes along with it. And yet, we're at this pivotal point in the Bible where we're going to change from a society that's led by Moses, who is like a judge, that's led by all these judges, to they're going to have a king who's going to have a line. Guess who's going to be the next king? His son. And guess who's going to be the next king? His son, after Saul, of course. And the next king is going to be his son. This is where you're going to get your king from. Whether they're good or not, whether they're up to the job or not, it's going to be whoever his son was. That's what God is going to do, and he's going to set it up. And when David comes, is God going to be like, oh, no, I didn't really want a king, so we're not going to do this king thing? What does God say? I will establish your house forever. So God goes along with it. And this is the upside down thing. Like, as I'm reading this, my problem is that God judges Eli. He's like, listen, you didn't get your house in order. And we see that Eli tried, right? It shows us that. Eli sees that his sons are doing wrong, and he goes and talks to them. He tries to correct them. We see that with Samuel. Does it show us where Samuel tried to correct his sons? Doesn't even show us that. And God says to Eli, you're going to be cut off. Bad things are coming your way, Eli. Your horns, they're done. And I'm going to raise up someone in the place. But what about Samuel? He has the same exact problem that Eli has. And you can almost see like what the people are saying here. Like, it almost makes sense. Like, we can see where this is going. You've been great, Samuel. We love you. You've been a leader that follows God. But you're going to go the way of all the earth. And we've seen who's coming next. And we don't want them. And God doesn't want them. And you expect God to say, all right, we got to reset again, right? Instead, what does God say? Oh, don't you listen to them. They haven't rejected you, they've rejected me. And anybody else have a problem with that? It's something for us to wrestle with. It's this upside down thing. every time you expect something to happen, God is going to change it. And he's going to show you, no, that's not how it works. Just like in Hannah's song, the mighty will be broken. The weak will be strengthened. The hungry will be full. The full will be hungry. And so, I believe this is here for us to wrestle with. Why does God say this? Why doesn't he say, yeah, you know, man, this is him, and you really did mess up. I mean, it was right there for you to see. You grew up in Eli's house. You saw what his sons were doing. You heard, and he was the one that got the prophecy. You remember that? Remember the whole story about how, you know, he's there sleeping and God calls to him and he thinks it's Eli and he goes to Eli 3 times. And finally God comes to him and he says, Hanini, here I am. And he gets the prophecy. And Eli comes to him the next morning and he's like, you tell me what he said. Don't you leave out a word. I think Eli knows what's coming. He knows what kind of prophecy is coming to Samuel. And so Samuel tells him the whole thing. He's the one that told the prophecy of what happened. And he lets it happen again with his sons. And you would expect, I'm expecting God to say, okay, I got to do the same thing. I'm going to have to raise up someone else.
Isn't that the whole pattern of the children of Israel the whole time? It's like when things are going good, they turn disobedient and evil until things go bad. And then when they're subjected and slaves, then they cry out to the Lord for deliverance. And then as quick as they're delivered, they fall right back into the disobedient, evil ways and continue as the favor grows until it gets worse, but then it's like right back in the hole again. And it's over and over and over throughout the entire Old Testament.
It is. But we're going to fix it. Just give us time. It's going to take a while. Okay? Yes, Ron.
God knew about their desire to have a king all the way back in the time of Moses because of the passage in Deuteronomy chapter 17, which God says, when you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you and have taken possession of it and settled in it, and you say, let us set a king over us like all the nations around us, be sure to appoint over you a king the Lord your God chooses. He must be from among your fellow Israelites, do not place a foreigner over you, one who's not an Israelite. The king, moreover, must not acquire great numbers of honored horses for himself, or make the people return to Egypt to get more of them, for the Lord has told you, you are not to go back that way again. You must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. You must not accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. And when he takes the throne of his kingdom, he is to write for himself on a scroll a copy of this law, taken from that of the Levitical priests. It is to be with him, and he is to read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God, to follow carefully all the words of this law and these decrees, and not consider himself better than his fellow Israelites, and turn from the law to the right or to the left. Then he and his descendants will reign a long time over his kingdom in Israel.
Exactly. So not only do we have just this whole rules, that we have rules for how the king is going to operate, and we don't have a king, and you're not supposed to have a king. But God tells them why he's giving them these rules, because he's like, well, when you get there, you're going to want a king. Yes. And eventually we're going to have a king, right? And so it brings me back to this thing. Why does Hannah say God's going to anoint his king? Maybe she's been reading her Torah. Maybe she knows it's coming, right?
And I think, like the pattern of Israel, who was the one that was the most upset that the ark was? I mean, the biggest uproar came from the Philistines. They knew God's power more so than the Israelites did. They gave the almost like homage to God in the fact that there was such a great uproar in the Philistine camp. And it's almost like God is constantly having to switch them up because Israel gets so used to him. Well, we've got God. And so God's like, okay, you're used to me. Let's switch this up a little bit. Let's do things a little different. This is what you're expecting from me. You're too used to it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's almost like God's just like, I'm tired of you all taking me for granted.
God knows what he's doing. And then I go back to what you said, like, he gives them what they want. He somehow works with it,
Right.
right? He's like, yeah, I'm going to go along with this. He's going to let them build a temple, which he never wanted. We'll get to that. And then he's going to put his presence there, even though he never wanted this building in the first place. He's going to give them a king, even though they never wanted it. But somehow he's also teaching them. By giving them what they want, he's also eventually getting us to where we need to go. They have to learn. And that's what we saw in Judges. Like, they become Sodom and Gomorrah, but even in that, we see them doing what God wants them to do. That's what it takes for them to realize that I have to love my brother. I'm here to save my brother, not to cut him off. I'm here to redeem my brother. And we keep getting hints of that through the story. Even in here, I'm sure you can find, certainly you can find hints of people doing what's right. There's Hannah. There's Samuel. There are glimpses of people doing what's right. Even Saul is going to be a good king for decades until it goes downhill. And that sets us up for Saul next week.